Hello, and welcome to the Trans Agenda, a podcast by Trans Clinique. I'm your host, Niko, and I'm a trans man, and my pronouns are he and they. Every Thursday at 6 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, we'll be right here talking about the Trans Agenda. In this podcast, we'll delve into the unique challenges and experiences of trans folks, highlighting the voices of those who have lived it themselves. We'll explore issues such as navigating medical and legal systems, finding acceptance within family and community, and combating discrimination and violence. Our guests will share their personal stories and expertise, providing valuable insights and perspectives on this often misunderstood aspect of the human experience. Join us as we strive to educate, inform, and advocate for trans rights and visibility. Hello, and welcome to the Trans Agenda. My name is Carter Ray, and this is Niko Storman.
Oh, I was going to introduce myself. My name is Niko Storman. I'm a producer, I'm a creator, I'm a content,
Anyway, do you want to introduce yourself, Carter? Tell us a little bit about what you do.
Yeah, my name is Carter Ray, and I'm an actor. I am also a producer. I own a production company and filmmaker, musician, and I also, surprisingly have been putting on nights at the Abbey. That's been really fun. So yeah, just all around, just a great guy. No, but really, yeah. I also, have been a advocate for the trans community, hopefully, in one way or another, and hopefully just here to, share my story to the world. Started transitioning 9 years ago, publicly on YouTube and documenting my journey, and it's been a very fun, interesting, wild ride. So yeah, hopefully, there is more to come and more change to follow. So
well, I'm curious. So I was actually part of that. Like I was watching the YouTube wave, right?
Yeah.
And that was a big part of my journey. Was watching a couple of people who we don't really like now. Anyway, so like I was watching all the YouTube guys, and it seemed like to be in the public eye at that moment, which I was still like a baby queer. Like
you didn't do you weren't in YouTube. You were just watching.
Yeah, I was just watching. I think I tried to make a couple of videos, and for me, I was just busy. I don't know, but I feel like that period was very unique.
Yeah,
for the trans community. I want to know about your experience. Mm-hmm. What was it like being kind of like a role model for so many of you trans guys at that time?
I think it's actually really interesting that you say that, because I never really thought about it that way, like about how YouTube was such a monumental, like for me, a monumental purpose, because I didn't have any access to other trans people that I was aware of. I didn't even know what it meant to be trans when I was struggling with my identity. So the thing I turned to was the internet and to Google, and then sort of follow that was then of course like YouTube videos of other individuals' journeys, and I think that really opened up my eyes to so many things that I had zero encounter with. And I think that when that happened and I saw other people that had similarities to me, I think that was like honestly so important, because I was able to feel like I wasn't alone. I wasn't the only person. Like I thought I was the only person in the world for a while that felt this way. I thought it was so bizarre, so strange, and like I just was struggling, and I felt like an outcast for so long. And so to see, when you see anyone in any walk of life too, like you find somebody that has a similarity to you, you are like, it's exciting. It's like, oh my God, like I've been, I've done the same thing, and then you start, that's how conversations really start and connections start. And so I think that for me, seeing that there was a whole community that understood me, I wanted to also make sure that, and there was very little too. Like it wasn't like there wasn't like a bunch of people, but there was like a few. And I think like it's so funny because you meet other trans guys and you're like, did you ever follow so and so? Yeah. It's like, oh my God, yeah, that was the first trans guy I met. It's like and everyone has like pretty much the same like.
It's like
5.
What camp?
Yeah, it's like the same 5. Like you like put them in like a thing, but like I really wanted to document my journey. I think because of the fact that like for 2 purposes, it was to show others who didn't understand what it meant to be trans, and to get them to understand it better, of course, and hope if there was just one person that felt seen by my story, I felt like that I did my part. But on the other hand too, I really was for myself to be able to look back on, years down the line and see the growth that I had, as, someone to look back on that and to be like, wow, like, moments of doubt, go back to the YouTube videos and it's like, wow, I really have come a long way. So that was it was necessary for me.
Yeah,
to put myself out there like that.
I'm curious, like, how do you think it's changed being a trans person then versus being a trans person now?
It's weird because, like, I see a lot, obviously, now that I've always wondered, is that because I'm in the community now, I've found those resources that I've been looking for? Is it because of, like, things have changed? Like, obviously, things have changed. I think that, still so much growth to do, obviously, but I do feel like it has been more accessible for younger generation who might be struggling with more awareness. I think that there's still not a lot, but and it's really weird. I think about it. It's like if I was 16 now, like how would I feel? Like it's weird because I don't know. We're kind of like transitioned around the same time frame, right? Yeah. So it's like
it's a completely different landscape.
Yeah, I think so too. I think it's very different, and I think that they're fortunate to be able to have maybe a little bit more resources if they've been able to, of course. But I think it's bizarre to think about that because that was crazy. I never thought about that.
I feel like people, when I was coming out, at least, they were just kind of starting to know what it was to be trans. Yeah. And if not, when my best friend at the time was coming out, Liam, which was maybe 5 to 7 years prior to me, nobody knew what it was at all.
No, yeah.
So I was oftentimes just introducing people to even the concept of what it meant to be trans. And I don't even think that they had developed any like biases about it really, other than it was different, and different is always like weird or whatever. Yeah. But honestly, I think
people still don't know what it means to be trans. Like at least trans men.
That's a good point.
And I think that like, I did the night at the Abbey, and I've had someone literally came up to me last 2 months ago that I did the show, and I introduced the night, and I'm like, oh, this is like Heavenly Bodies, it's all trans night, all trans performers, all trans dancers that I book, and I did the show, and then after the show, this person was like, so you said that you're trans, and I'm like, yeah, and they're like, so like you want to be like they're like
they thought you were a trans woman.
No, wait, this is the best. He said, can I was like, yeah, I'm trans, and then he's like, can I give you a tip, sweetie? And I'm like, I said, what? And he goes, you might want to. I'm like, first of all, what if I did? Let me come for that. But then it's also like, no, bitch. I took 2 puberties to get this beard.
Yeah.
I'm going to keep it.
I'm not shaving
this bitch. And then, but I was just like I thought, I was just like, wow. And then also too, I got that comment, which was just like, honestly, at that point, it's just like, what do you do? But then also, another person was like, so does that mean that you like are into trans women? Like, I'm like, no, because I'm trans. That they didn't know. That's
not exactly how that works.
That's not really. That's not by definition. No. Yeah. No, but I was just like, man, that was like really interesting because like I think trans men visibility is so minimal.
Yeah.
And I think that is something that people would trip out on. Like it's weird. It's like, but it's because they have no, like there's no representation for trans men that's out like very strong following of like artists and this and that. Like if you think about it, like major artists, you don't know.
Kim, we have Liver.
Yeah, right.
But we don't have like the equivalent. Yeah.
There's been like also too like, yeah, it's just been, so that's also why I would document my journey, and also too why I started to go into film.
I feel like a lot of trans people, it's really important for us to talk about wealth and wealth management. When I was first early transition, I was working at Starbucks, and I would get misgendered, and I decided for me it wasn't like a safe situation to be working there.
Comfortable.
Comfortable, and so I went into freelancing, and so that's how I dealt with that. But having a job, especially a public-facing job, is very difficult for trans people unless you're maybe in the queer community. So I'm always curious about trans people who have figured it out, and I feel like you're pretty successful. You want to tell us
like within the film, like within my my career,
your production company, your acting, your events career.
Yeah, I think that's interesting because I wasn't always I always wanted to be an entertainer. You know, I always was putting on plays and stuff like that for my family, but never anything, you know, I never did any courses or anything like that. Like, you know, but I just liked to create, and I think I always was, you know, interested in storytelling, and whether that was hearing someone's story or sharing my own. And I felt like I wasn't comfortable enough when it came to acting. I wasn't comfortable enough to play a female role, and I didn't feel confident enough to play a male role. I wouldn't, you know, I couldn't play that at that time because, you know, I wouldn't have even tried because, like, so I was just like, that's not gonna happen. But after I started my transition and started to gain more confidence in who I was, I kind of realized, like, I've been acting my whole life for society. So, like, now I can actually embody who I am truly, you know, outside of acting. And I think you have to be able to kind of, like, navigate that. And once I was able to do that, I was able to kind of pole vault into my career as an actor and be able to really understand a character, you know, and dive deep into that because I've been doing it my whole life. So I that was really cool, and that was, like, fun to discover within myself as an actor, I think. And from there, I just, you know, I wrote my first short film, and it was my baby. I was like, I'm not gonna do this until I save up and have the funds to make it good, because you can have a great script, but if you don't have, you know, resources or the, like, capability with a crew and, like, you know, I've seen some amazing films with no budget that are shot and they're great, but they took their time to really plan it out to make it that way, you know, and that's really cool, and I love that. I think that for me, I didn't know how to do that yet, so I was like, I gotta, like, you know, wait it out, and I took my time on it, and I was really, you know, it's not like the most incredible thing, but I was really proud of that. And I think that after that, I was like, I want to share through writing and film, like, other trans narratives, or also non-trans narratives that trans people play non-trans characters. So that's really cool, you know. And I liked to I just love watching a film and connecting with a character. Like, you know, we all connect through TV and film, so if there's someone in the middle of America who's never been introduced to a trans person, to be able to, like, watch them through the screen, because that's their only encounter that they have, to be able to understand that character, it has to be told correctly, of course. That's why representation in film and TV is so important, and why trans people need to be in charge of, you know, consulting the storyline, so that it's told correctly and that they're getting the correct information. Yeah, and I don't think it always has to be positive. It has to be positive, but, like, there could be sad, like, hardships within that character. Because I think there's this difference.
Because that's real.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I've heard so many different things, like, oh, like, why don't we show the happy, jolly, like, trans characters? It's like, I want to see that, yes, and there are happy, jolly, like, go lucky, like, you know, trans people. We exist, yeah, but we also, just because we have, you know, personalities that are uppity, doesn't mean that we don't struggle with things that are difficult either. So I want to see, you know, some hardships, but also, like, success.
I mean, really, what I think when I'm thinking about, like, representation is just diversity of narrative in terms of identity, different.
I don't just want to see a coming out story. Right. I'm over that.
But in terms of your narrative, in terms of how trans people think, like, trans people, that's part of the reason why I do this podcast, is because trans people are so different from one another. Everybody has, like, you just talked about how your being trans affected your art, right? And how you were able to learn from your experience. I had somebody else earlier in another episode who was like, me being trans doesn't affect my art at all. I'm just an artist who happens to be trans. Yeah. Both are totally
which in some things I do feel that way. It's it's like my music, for instance, like, I'm diving into a different, like, area where I don't talk about, like, because me being trans is not the most difficult thing I've ever, like, dealt with. I've dealt with, like, my heart, like, heartbreaks, like, that changes me, like, that affects me, like, but being trans, yes, it affects me, and it's also it's a part of me, but it's not all of me. Like, there's so many, like, there's so many layers to people, and, like, being trans is just one of them. Does it affect, like, I do think it does. I think it does affect my life, but not in one way or the other. It's just like, it was just an experience I went through or I go through or whatever it is, and it is a part of me, but it's not the most like important, and it's not the most like, defining thing of my life. It's like really it's like kind of weird because it's like sometimes I feel that way, but sometimes I don't.
No, yeah.
Totally. I don't know if that makes any sense.
It makes total sense. I feel like anytime I go into a doctor's office or a therapist or whatever, they assume that being trans is the biggest thing in my life.
Yeah.
And the truth is, I mean, at a certain point in my life, yes, that was true, and I went to a gender therapist at that time. But to be honest, now it's like there's other things like I'm trying to make money.
Trying to survive.
I'm trying to survive. I'm trying to like figure out like how to like live in late stage capitalism like everybody else.
Yeah.
Right now, like there's such other things in our lives that that matter, and so that's super valid.
It's really interesting because sometimes I feel like that even now, like, well, back then I was like, that was like my main focus when I was like figuring out who I was and what it meant to be trans and like who I wanted to be, like, so it did affect, take over and consume me for a long time when I was figuring that out, and especially in the beginning of my transition, because like it's all you could focus on because you can't really, it's hard to focus outside of it was hard for me to focus outside of being trans because I was so consumed by like wanting to feel okay, right, and wanting to look at the mirror and know that person, and I feel like that consumed my everyday for a long time, and it got to a point where, and I was making YouTube videos, so I was like documenting like the timeline, and I was like so like consumed by it, which I don't regret that, but at the same time I'm like, I lost a lot of like I don't regret any of the steps, but when I look back I'm like, man, like I should have been like worrying about what beach I'm gonna go to with my friends for that weekend, and like because everyone else was where are we going? What are we doing? Yeah, and I couldn't. It was like
you were consumed by this. I went through the same.
Yeah,
and it's also I think a privilege the fact that passed for both of us.
Yes,
you know what I mean. And so it's interesting because I played a character. I played Harry Allen in this play, and Harry Allen was a historical figure. He's like a trans cowboy.
Yeah,
it was really fun to play him, but it made me think because I had to learn about his life, obviously. Mm-hmm. And I learned that he was arrested multiple times. Many of the women that he was with like killed themselves because I mean the history is a little like I don't really know why, but either it was because they found out he was trans or because they couldn't handle society. But I don't know if that feeling of all consuming really did end for Harry Allen at any point, because eventually he did die of tuberculosis, which may or may not have been induced by like drug behaviors and like drinking and like living a lifestyle, which maybe that's just the telling of the times or whatever. But to be honest, like we don't know what systemic factors like contributed. So I don't know. I think it's great that we are at a point in society where we can move past that. Yes. But
it doesn't take away I think I'm so happy that I'm like, comfortable in my skin and like able to have like a level head and like be able to like do other things outside of being trans. But at the same time I do feel it's important for me to still be visible, because I feel like I am privileged enough to have the safety net that I do to be out, and not everyone does. And I also feel like I have the platform where I can make an impact by being open and reaching an audience who might I've had people like I've told my mom about you and to get her to understand me, and like that's important to me, and because I wish I had that at that time. And I think that I still feel for me, I still feel as it's a part of my, like, it's not my duty, but, like, I do feel like it's, like, that's what I need to be doing. Mm-hmm. And not everyone has to. Just because you're trans doesn't mean you sign up to be a spokesperson,
right.
For that. Like, it's not, and that's okay. And in my opinion, that's just not what is, like, your job to do, is to educate people. No, like, but for me, it's what because of my situation, because of the privileges that I do have, I choose to be. So,
well, let me ask you this: what is your trans agenda?
Oh man, that one I forgot. You literally told me, like, that's the one question I asked everyone, and I did not prepare it. No, I just want like understanding. I think I want like other people that have no idea what it's like to be trans, who have no education on what it's like to be trans, to not just understand but to listen. I think that that's like the one thing, like you know, we talked about this earlier about like debating, like, you know, it's like you are a good debater because you're willing to change depending if they can, because if you're listening, you can really hear, and like you can absorb their experience, and that's like really important. And I think that that's something that I've had to learn because I was so stubborn. I'm like, no, I'm right. But then it's like, what's the point of even having a conversation? Like, why are we even doing this? It's wasted energy. And I think that like, I wish like they could hear me, because I'm not really quick to, if someone doesn't get what it means to be trans, if they're coming at me in a way that's like just uneducated, but they want to know, like they're genuinely like, I've never been able to feel comfortable enough with a trans person to ask them something, like, can I ask you something? I'm like, yeah, please, like, I'd rather you ask me and tell you like my experience, and you can do as you want with that. But like, I think just like listening and hearing each other, I feel like is so important, because like right now, like I just feel like people are so quick to attack other people on all ends. Like, I think it's so important just to be able to hear each other from a place of love, and like, you know, like, but as long as they're not being hateful.
It's all love.
It's all love. My trans agenda is love.
Oh, that's so sweet.
To put it simply.
Thanks so much for being on the podcast, Niko. You're so sweet.
I know. I'm the best talk show host ever. World famous producer, Rose and Creative House guy.
Vincent House Productions.
Let's get it.
Okay. Trans individuals face unique challenges every day. From accessing healthcare to navigating legal systems, it is crucial that we work towards creating a society that is inclusive and supportive of people of all gender identities. This means advocating for policies and practices that prioritize the health and well-being of trans individuals, as well as challenging discriminatory attitudes and behaviors where they exist. By coming together to support and uplift trans voices, we can create a brighter and more equitable future for everyone. Thank you for listening, and let us continue to work towards a world where trans individuals can thrive. Follow us on all social media platforms @transclinique, and don't forget to like this video and hit the subscribe button.